Well, good evening, everybody, to BDP. Welcome to the EQN network, all the members, and also to everyone else who's attending tonight on behalf of BDP. I'm Catherine Tombling. I'm one of the principals here in our London studio. I'm also a representative of BDP Belonging, which is our EDI network. We established the network 2.5 years ago. We've done lots, but we know we've got lots more to learn and do. So I'm really relevant and interested in the discussion tonight, and to hear from our young people over here for the PechaKucha and the slightly older ones with their responses. So thank you once again. Really looking forward to a lively discussion this evening.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Jane Duncan, and I'm going to be your host for this evening. And that's me looking inquisitive. It happens occasionally. I hope this is going to be a fun event, that everybody's going to join in, and not an opportunity to have a little nap, because this is to sort out the next leaders of our industry. So get involved, be part of it. What I've got over my left shoulder over here are 8 fantastic young people from across the industry. They're going to do a PechaKucha. I don't think any of them have done one before. Have any of you done one before? Oh, well, this is going to be fun then. Basically, they've been given just a few seconds, and they've got to get up there. They have 3 minutes each to do 10 slides. They can do what they like with them. I don't mind what they say. In fact, the more ridiculous it is, the more fun I have with it. And then the last of their slides is to ask questions of the panel of vintage. Is that right? I've been asked to call everybody vintage. And I'm going to be chairing a panel after they've done their bit to find out what the questions were that they've been asked by these people in PechaKucha, land over here, and see what we can do about it. I hope that they're going to be really asking the right questions to make us make a difference. Now, I've got a very short presentation, which is where this really all started, which is the reason for this, which is that I am extraordinarily worried about the future, because the future is actually now. In fact, we're already in the future, and everything's coming at us at such a rate of knots, and I don't think we're doing enough about it. And these guys are the ones that are going to inherit the mess if we don't do something about it. So the key here is that we're talking about leadership of the built environment and who should be taking leadership. So I've got young people here today because that's where I think we are. And professional leadership is what we're about in the industry. I'm not going to read all these slides. You can read this as well as I can. But for me, the point is that we're looking at a world that's changing at absolutely crazy speed, and not necessarily all in a good way. So we've got to be much more resilient. We've got to be much more ready. We've got to be much more sensible about how we prepare for the future that's already here now and is going to be changing very, very fast indeed. And then I think we need to think about the resources and the construction context for those resources, because it's not very difficult within this industry to see that actually we're near to the point where we already need 1.7 Earths to keep up doing what we're doing at the moment. And that's after at least 20 years of us thinking about sustainability in the industry. So by 2050, and I think even that's not realistic, I think it'll be much sooner than that, we'll actually need 3 Earths. It's not going to happen unless these guys have a way of giving us another Earth. Any ideas for another Earth? Okay, got to do something about it. And then the geopolitical impacts are just terrible for me, because we've had one pandemic that really screwed things up, and as far as I can see, made us very nationalistic, very aggressive, very xenophobic. And I think it also has had an effect on the whole of the supply chain. We are going to have to think differently, aren't we? Let's face it. There will be more pandemics. They're on the way. Natural disasters, wars, it's all increasing at the moment. And then I know this is a bit political at the moment, isn't it? About the economy actually not being very good. I'm not encouraging you to vote in any particular way, but what I am saying is that we don't have a welfare system that really works for the majority of people. And the built environment is, to be honest, not in a good state. So we've got to do something about that. And what about designing cities? Well, there's so much to be thought through now that has to involve what is it going to be like very soon to be in our cities. So inclusivity and accessibility, fine, but what about pollution? That's the big one for me. Lack of water, lack of food, huge parts of the world overheating. And then, okay, we build things. I am really worried as an architect that we're not getting the built environment that is actually what we need it to be, i.e. safe and doing what it says on the tin, actually. I think we need a much better construction world. I know that the BSA is, well, I'm very involved in that, but I know the BSA is doing its best. I'm sure in this room, we're all exceptions to the rule, but to be honest, we can't stop. Okay, so this is where it gets a little bit lighter. However, I thought that life under the impact of the climate changes we're going through is a bit like the script of Minority Report. I've just put 2 of my favourite films into this presentation. So the question is the future predetermined, or can it actually be altered by free will? That's ours, by the way. And what is our new reality going to be? Now, I've put in, can we consider The Inception? And that's actually another of my favourite films. Have you watched it? I love it. Keep doing it. But can it be a better designed world? Can it be more resilient? Can it be more egalitarian? Not if we carry on as we are. We need advocacy. This is something I believe in very firmly. I've been doing a lot of it. People in the institutions, Sandy's the same. Everybody's been doing a lot of advocacy to make things change, but it's not enough. We've got to be quicker, we've got to be more decisive, and we've got to be together. And having lovely visions doesn't actually save the world. Doing lovely actions does. So collaboration, I say do it, don't just talk about it. Being collaborative doesn't mean we have good discussions, it means more. Bit closer? Do you actually want to hear me? Oh, damn. Right. So here we are, housing needs. This is something we can all relate to. I mean, I just say, can't we do better than put our refugees in something like this? We're all refugees. I certainly am the descendant of refugees, and I suspect most people here are. Come along, let's do it. Have a look at what's being done elsewhere. Interestingly, in Ukraine, they've had millions of people displaced. So their architects have developed this refugee housing with modular timber frame, and they've had 1.9 million people displaced, and yet they're housing them now. We can do that. But then the one below, which is a shelter for Rohingya women and girls in Pakistan, is actually using local materials. And that for me is very important. And look how beautiful things can be, but how useful. So vision and reality, or vision versus reality, can we make everything go a bit further? And I just think maybe if we talk about it, we can turn this into a revolution, and maybe redefine who we are and what we're going to contribute to the planet, not just to our businesses. And we need to restore the planet. That's one of the things that worries me. So I just said, I'm an architect, so apologize. What's next? Regenerative architecture, why not? Let's think about contributing, not just taking away. Here's one thing that scares me to death as an older person. Vintage, if you like, okay, which is data invasion and AI. I think it's fantastically useful, but I also think there are problems with this. And I've got a question at the bottom here. Are we actually willing to allow our governments to develop benefit surveillance to the point where we lose all privacy? I don't know, what do you think about that? I'm not asking the questions tonight, I'm just throwing ideas at you. So do we have vision, or are we going to allow an invasion? Could all of this surveillance create a duplicate of Minority Report? I don't know, personal behavior and facial recognition it's all there. It's all there now. So maybe it's not that far away. How do we build a better future? This is very, very dull, isn't it? Relationships, communications, trust, and then build safe, inclusive, visionary spaces. And every crisis, and this is a crisis, is an opportunity. And we have to be courageous and we have to be professional. And I say, this is one of my favorite people on the planet. I've listened to her talk. She's fabulous. Success isn't about how much money you make. It's the difference you make in people's lives. And good on you, girl. And going for the American theme here, the best way to predict the future is to create it. And that's what we're doing tonight. I want to hear from the young people in our industry to see what they want us to create and what they want to take part in as leaders in our profession. Right, thank you. Now let's hear from our future leaders, or rather maybe tomorrow's leaders, and I don't mean 10 years. They've got, unfortunately, a very, very short space of time to get across here, to do their bit, and then to come and join the audience. Good luck. You will have a little bit of time to rush on because you'll see your name come up. Who's running this? How do I get it started? Okay, Heidi, are you ready? Okay, go.
Hi, so I'm Heidi. I'm an architect, so everything that I'm going to talk about is going to be from the lens of an architect a little bit. But actually what I want to talk about is time, something that's quite abstract, it's quite elusive, but also something that we can all relate to regardless of our backgrounds in architecture, contractors and developers, and something that shapes the way that we work, but also the way that we relate to each other. First, I want to take us back in time, back to 2007. That's when Al Gore told us all about global warming. That's when An Inconvenient Truth came out. That's when I became aware of the climate crisis that we're in. And when I discovered maybe architecture is a way that we can find a solution together. But what I found out 18 years later, last year was the hottest year that was ever on record, and we are told that we're running out of time. 18 years is how long it takes from a baby to become an adult. And despite all that time, we still haven't found a solution yet. And having joined the industry, I realized that politics takes too much time. Policies that are needing to be implemented, such as Part Z, are not being implemented even after 3 years. So we're not seeing the change that we need in the industry from a governmental level. And consequently, as a construction industry, we're not keeping up. This was a project I was involved in. We proposed timber construction. Biodiversity net gain ambitions were high, but different reasons, COVID, but also a lack of trust from insurance, liability issues, it turned from timber into steel. What I realized is project takes time. We've all seen schedules from concept to delivery. And if we really need to see the change that we want to have, we need to implement it in the projects that we're involved in now. 15 seconds. And I want to propose that the issue that we have is that we spend too many hours behind the screen. I think as young professionals, a lot of us find ourselves not equipped to make the change that we want to see because we're trying to meet the project deadlines that we have imminently, and not having the scope to explore to meet the deadlines that we have globally. And as architects, we spend way too much time in education. It's 5 years minimum. It took me 10 years from beginning architecture school to become an architect. And that's too much time if we actually want to see change now. And when I began architecture school, I bought this book called 101 Lessons That You Learn in Architecture School. And I didn't realize the last lesson was architects are late bloomers. But my question is, why do architects have to be late bloomers? And I'd like to propose 3 things for this to change. Firstly, education needs to be shortened. We spend too much time in education in theory. And once we're in the profession, we don't actually have enough time to do research, to practically implement change. And finally, we need your time as experienced professionals to mentor us and make these changes with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. That was really good. Hello, my name is Nastasia. I'm a sustainability consultant at VDP. And guess what the topic is? Yeah, so the topic is climate change and the built environment, but really it is about how to deal with contractors who think sustainability is a cult, direct quote. So the built environment and construction sector accounts for 39% of global carbon emissions. I will have to speed up as the slides go by. Among those 39%, 28% of global carbon emissions are due to the operational energy consumed by buildings. And 11% are due to the embodied carbon, which is the carbon associated with materials and construction. So it has been estimated that globally, we built the equivalent of a city the size of Paris every single week. And 80% of buildings which will be occupied in 2050 already exist. So it means that it's really important to decarbonize existing buildings. The built environment has a critical role to play in addressing the climate crisis, limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees, and enabling the UK to transition to net zero by 2050. So there is a new UK net zero carbon building standard, which will come out very soon, and it will set out operational energy targets and embodied carbon targets. So it helps to help the UK progress towards net zero carbon by 2050, and this will help limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees. So there are really three challenges we need to address in this industry, and it will come up in the next slide, really. But one of them is change of culture and mentality among contractors and cost consultants, especially. Embed sustainability into the design from day one and price projects appropriately for sustainability across all disciplines, because it's a teamwork. Molly?
Get ready to see the difference between architect's slides and engineers. So here come my slides. I'm an engineer, a design engineer for Hilsa Moran. And I'm going with the question of, are we truly inspiring the next generation to innovate and sustain our built environment? And I'm doing this question because, okay, 10, 15, as long as I thought it was. I have more to say, I can ramble, it's fine. So, the dodgy fringe on the far left, that's me 10 years ago when I was in year 9, picking my GCSE options. I didn't even know what a design engineer was at that point. So I'm not sure how I think that we could impact future designers if I didn't even know what they were. I think from my experience, I wasn't contacted by anyone to do with our current landscape until university level. And, you know, there's current next generation networks that are doing stuff like CIBSEM, which I'm a part of, and Abriba Future Architects came to speak to me at uni. I'm sure there's others, but these are kind of the first port of call that we have. But these don't have enough support from senior leadership, full stop. I know I run a campaign, we have a bit. And I think there also has to look at this way, you know, we need education, but I think the future leaders also need to be educated and be inspired by us as well. Like, as you said earlier, future technology might scare you, but we enhance it. We use the things that you've built and we enhance them. So why not bring us all together? And I think that's another thing, cross-discipline teams needs to be looked at properly. And I think, you know, you have a design team and they collaborate at a high level, but do you bring your graduates in for these design teams? Do you help your graduates and in terms of like software training and soft skills training, do you train them to be leaders? Or do you just throw them in the deep end like you were and expect them to swim? And then leading on from that, you need to inspire them. Everyone has a passion. Speak about what your passions are. These are some people that I'm inspired by at my workplace, but there's loads of them. And engage with your future leaders. Tell them what your passions are. Listen to what their future passions, well, what their current passions are and what they want from the future. So I think the three things that need to be improved are engagement with students and graduates. Soft skills training need to be included as part of normal training process, and connections between the next generation and the built environment, whether this is in design team meetings or at, you know, different levels within your company and externally. But yeah, thank you. Those are my three questions.
Hi all, nice to see you all. I'm Rachel Hoff and I'm a senior town planner at BDP. Who's now waiting for the slide to change because I hadn't practiced this bit. And this evening, I'm going to make the case that the way that we approach equality, diversity and inclusion in the workplace could usefully be informed by a key concept from town planning known as the planning balance. Often when we hear about town planning in the press, it has the image of kind of being red tape that stops us from building the things that we need. And there are, of course, many times when that isn't true, and I'm sure that some other people might be telling you about that later. But I want to focus on what can be good about the town planning system, namely the concept of the planning balance, which describes how planning decisions should be made. And that involves weighing up all of the relevant factors, which might include those on the screen, to work out whether the positive outweighs the negative and planning permission should be granted. And that's not a simple thing to do. Sometimes the factors conflict and we have to make value judgments about how they should weigh against one another. But at its best, I think that's what planning should be. It's not red tape, but it's a means to mediate that complexity and decide what we really value. So I want to move on to apply that lens to EDI, which I think also risks being viewed as a bit of a tick box activity. However, I think we need to recognise that, like the built environment, it's inherently complex and that should be embraced. And I'm going to explore that through three key questions. So firstly, who is doing the work? It'll be quite easy to look at that and say we need more women. But I think to address that, we actually need to look at multiple barriers to inclusion and how they interact. We need more neurodiverse women. We need more women of colour if we're going to be truly inclusive. Secondly, how are we working? So, for example, flexible working has allowed a better balance between work and home lives, but there will always be times when we need to be physically present. And that's where we need to recognise that actually it's complicated and come to a value judgment about where the trade-offs lie. And thirdly, what are we working on? Are we working on projects that really kind of make the change that we want to see? And one thing I'd be really interested to hear from the panelists is how do you decide what we work on and what values come into that? Is it just profit or are there other factors? And how do you weigh them up and prioritise? So just to sum up, I think that by applying a planning balance lens, we can improve our approach to EDI. But importantly, that bit also translates back into our built environment. By having a range of voices in the room, we put the right things into the balance and get better development out of it. So my three things are, be less tick box, recognise that things are nuanced and complex. In recognising that, make a decision about what we truly value. And thirdly, put words into action. We can't let complexity become red tape, and we need to get building.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Luce Koopmans, and I work at Gustav and Porter Bowman, and I teach at Kingston University, which will become relevant in a bit. I'm going to start before my slide comes up, but I'm going to talk about the paradoxical issue that there is a water shortage in the UK, which doesn't seem like it at the moment, everyone complaining about the weather, but due to lack of infrastructure and reliance on water abstraction, the UK is maybe going towards a day zero, such as Cape Town or Barcelona's dry rivers. And the solution has been to then push this onto the population rather than governments or policies stepping up to address these challenges, which I don't really agree. So as you can see, this is how the stresses are going. On the first slide, you could see that England is in the same situation as Cape Town and Barcelona. And then that would also lack in soil becoming drier. Then is the focus now on the right part? Agricultural land is largely the main land use in the UK, which seems which we don't really address as much in landscape. And so why is it that we have people in really dense areas, our landscapes have to perform really high in the built environment, but are we addressing these problems in the right areas in the UK? And, you know, young people have been kind of bombarded with these issues since a young age with lovely Wally, but I don't believe there's a Wally to come save us. So again, is the focus going to be greenwashing and solving the solution on younger generations, or rather, can we actually put this into policy, and is it structured the way that we need it to be? Similarly, we continue to have pandemics and then invasive, sorry, lost my train of thought, COVID and, right. Brexit policies, they've all not really been improving with the latest economic crises, and also it has ensured that we have less students coming and staying. So how are we going to address these issues? How are you combating the decline of recognition for our disciplines? Do you believe the existing planning system effectively facilitates regional and national development efforts to do it on a larger scale? And given the critical importance of addressing these issues, should chartered bodies alone be responsible for raising awareness and ensuring the development of skilled workers in our discipline across all educational levels?
I'm Roz. I'm going to bin this off because I've never used one before and I'm scared. So the biggest issue, sorry, I'm an engineer. And I think one of the biggest issues that I'm going to face in my career is sexism. Oh, cover it, sorry. I'll try it. While blatant statements are becoming more easy to spot, I've stopped counting the number of times that someone's assumed that someone on site's a man, or one of my friends or I have been whistled at by workers on the site. Some things are slightly more subtle. For instance, this is me in the smallest high-vis jacket they had available on site. It doesn't make me feel particularly professional or comfortable when I look like someone's lost their child. But continuing to look like this while I do my job isn't particularly inspiring to the girls who are considering following in my footsteps. In the industry, there's forecast to be a lack of engineers as fewer people are actually studying the subject. I'm only a civil engineer because I took a career quiz after my A-levels and it spat out civil engineering, which I originally disregarded because I thought it was similar to a civil servant. So this graph here shows the percentage of other young women that are considering a career in engineering and how it drops from 45% at the age of 14 to only 25% at the age of 19. So it's a hell of a lot of engineers we've already lost before they've started uni. If engineers do make it into the industry, then they're faced with this big drive to be more sustainable and not really any pointers on how to get there. Construction is one of the UK's biggest polluters, and while there are initiatives in place to change that, the sustainability aspect of projects are often driven more by client goals than by construction companies working underneath them. We specify to source locally and recycle materials, but at the end of the day, there's only so much difference that can make, which brings me on to my final point. That changes in legislation do not match the pace of advancements. So many materials are available that are more sustainable, are cheaper and stronger than standard, but we can't use them because legislation hasn't changed to match the speed of scientific innovations. So I've gone for solutions rather than questions for the panel. Number one, green initiatives, not just consider trees before printing this email, but striving to be green on projects in areas that clients haven't considered, and teaching employees about the ways their company is and can change to be more sustainable. Two, stepping away from how not to sexually harass someone, but focusing on preemptively teaching employees about how to react and report afterwards to an event if they're a victim or a bystander. Knowing how to deal with it and the next steps really does help diminish the effect of the abuse. Three, collaborative school initiatives. Raising the visibility of engineering careers in both younger and older school children, teaching them how many different roles there are out there, whether they love maths, hate it, want to be on site all day, or prefer a temperature-controlled office. Thank you very much.
Hi all, I'm Sarah Moss. I'm a development manager at Lendlease. I commenced my career in the built environment as a town planner and then made the switch. So I've been property development for 5 years across large scale projects in Australia and the UK. So when I got asked to speak about what we need as young people for support, it kind of rattled my mind for a bit. And then I reflected, what's really holding me back? It's uncertainty. It's the complete face for the last 7 years in this industry that I've had absolutely no certainty. Everything's shifting and changing and evolving faster every year. It's a completely different climate to when our seniors started the profession. This brings some really, really exciting opportunity. The sustainability agenda, the better quality, more affordable housing, the technology innovation. They're all stuff I'm part of and want to continue to be part of. But what it doesn't consider is the flip side of that, and the gap of this evolving change and where our young people are left in these organisations, the leaders don't know how to lead, and it leaves such a gap. So broadly, when I think of 3 major areas of uncertainty I'm facing, is 1, the market. And I agree, this has always been there, and okay, I'll give you guys a pass. You can't control the property market. I'll accept that. But 2, policy, such as planning and the building regulations, and even more frequently, the political knee-jerk response to policy. And 3, the biggest impact you can have is in your organizations. The companies you are leading, your structures are they truly supporting a dynamic nature? Are they part of? So together these things, with your leadership, let us young people make mistakes. Let us innovate. Let us create value. So I challenge you as leaders, can you be these dots to us young people? This could be you. You could provide us the support. When you're in these senior leader meetings, when you're talking about policy, when you're talking about your organization, think further than just your current project. Think further than just your current studio. You guys are going to retire, hopefully for you guys soon. And what are the motivations long term? When you think about your company, think about the dynamic changes, think how you let people grow, how you make mistakes. The biggest learning I got when I was a grad is that I got budget, and I got budget to make mistakes in safe space. And that has helped me significantly as I've grown. And I don't see that as frequent in my peers in the industry now. So my questions are, how do you provide opportunity for your team to make mistakes and grow? What role are you playing to ensure regulatory change is best practice and non-political? And what advice would you give us? We need to learn and we want to learn.
Hi everyone, I'm Camille Rogg. I'm a town planner and environmentalist, but I think we should all be environmentalists. We're all part of nature. We are all nature ourselves. So I'm going to talk about biodiversity and preserving the future, or preserving nature for future prosperity. That'll be cool. So I think it's important to have a common language as a starting point so that we're all on the same page when we talk about nature. We know what we're talking about, what it means. So biodiversity is the wonderful variety of life on Earth, the variety of species in any given place, a place being a habitat which hosts all those different organisms, all the different interactions that go on in there. And finally, natural capital is essentially the meaning or the value of nature and how we term it. So natural capital refers to the stocks, so what we own in terms of nature, how we get benefits from it, so the value it creates to businesses, and also how it flows in between those two things. So natural capital allows us to look at nature as an asset, not as a cost. Natural capital is determined by biodiversity, so it's upheld by the ability of those species to survive, to provide productive ecosystems, and we're currently facing a biodiversity crisis, as we all know, with a great extinction happening partly because of the work in the construction industry and development. And these 5 main drivers of species loss actually come from us in the development industry. So all of them can be related in some way to essentially us spreading invasive species, us creating pollution. And so those are the challenges there to address to make sure that we can keep productive natural systems. And this results in shifting ecological baselines where each generation, having inherited a worse environment than before, expects less from it. This is exemplified in the fisheries in Canada, where they essentially found that each generation of fishermen expected to catch less fish and smaller ones because of the fact that they were overfished before. You can also see it in the bison. So obviously the great extinction in North America, we lost many bison, and we now go and visit national parks where we reserve them in small pockets, but there's something that was abundant previously. So it's important to be aware of how essentially we have lost that abundance. And an example in the English countryside, the English fens, in the 16th century, Elizabeth I had a banquet of all of those amazing species for food. I'm a vegetarian, so I wouldn't approve of it, but it goes to show what the fens were able to produce at the time before we drained them. In the 17th century, we drained the fens, so Cambridgeshire's east of England, to create agricultural landscapes, but that meant that we lost all those wonderful species. And in doing so, we sort of lost something that we didn't know we had, and we can't return to it now without significant investment. However, things are looking up. So you can see here an article from last year. Beavers are returning to London through intervention, through active work to return them. And it can feel quite alien. It made the news, the fact there's a beaver in London, but a few hundred years ago, there would have been plenty of them around. It's just that we've lost that baseline. And baselines also apply to the built environment in the same way. So the loss of cultural heritage on the high street, the loss of nice frontages, the loss of beauty and design, as we've had from last year's planning white paper, the loss of public toilets being available. So it's important to think about baselines in all frames. And so these questions I've posed here get us to think about what are the baselines that we engage with and how do we influence them? How can the projects we work on be nature positive and people positive to make sure that future baselines are greater than what we started with? Thank you.
Well done. If you don't feel shocked after that lot, I don't know what. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you, you guys. I'm going to ask our vintage panelists. Old then, okay. Old panelists, if they'd like to come and sit at the front. I was going to come and sit with you, but I don't know whether anybody will notice me. It's bad enough when I'm standing up. So, you guys, you've listened to a lot of fantastic points by these young people. They have a lot to say, don't they? And I'm going to expect this to be a fairly wide-ranging discussion. At some point, when they run out of things to say next week, I'm going to open for questions to the audience. So keep them coming, write them down, have a think about what you'd like. And I don't know whether you guys have got all the answers, but I certainly hope you might have some. Is there any question that you've heard today that you really feel that you want to jump onto? Martin is saying yes. Go on then, Martin. You have to have this.
All of them. Look, I feel a bit weird sitting up here with my vintage colleagues, I've got to say, because how... Oh, really? Okay. How are we supposed to follow that? I mean, really, because this is what it's all about, right? So all I want to say is that we have a job here. Somebody told me one time that if you want to know how to succeed, you need to hire the very best young people and then just get the fuck out of the way. You know, that's your job when you run a business. And it's that's a bit flippant and a funny thing to say, but it's absolutely true. You know, one of you said, you know, we're all going to be retired. I am staring at retirement not far away. And what am I supposed to do? Just kind of leave my business and just think, well, it's not my responsibility anymore. You know, I'm gone. That's insane and insanely irresponsible. And so I see it as a very, very large part of my job to make sure that the young people in my business is quite big, have an opportunity to take over the business as it grows. It's an enormous responsibility. And so I've learned something today. Absolutely. I've learned something from all of you speaking today. And the thing that I've learned the most is if you forget that the young people in your business are the most passionate, the most interesting, the most excited, the most in need of support and help, then you'll fail. We have to work super unbelievably hard. I'll shut up in a second. So the thing that I'm most interested in answering of all your questions, other than the technical questions, how do we sort the environment out? How do we sort our business out? Is how do we support young people who have those questions? How do we provide the context in which we can find the answers together to those questions? And that's about listening. It is. In our business, and I'm sure in yours, is no more are the young people in the room mute. It just can't work like that, because I know less than all of you up there about those things that you've just talked about, because you've made it your business to know about those things. And so we would be fools if we didn't listen, and that's what we need to do.
Right, I'm going to say that I'm not retired. The word retirement in my family and in the area I operate is banned. There's another word that's banned, and somebody used it today when they said they were only an engineer. If I could have £1 for every engineer who has said, wherever they are, I'm only an engineer, be proud, you're not only an engineer, and no women are only something. So that's a dirty word. I'm not retired, I'm liberated, and I'm going to be really, really awkward. And I think that's one of the things vintage people can do. You can be fearless and you can be awkward. And I'm going to stop being a president in 3 weeks' time. And I think there's a bit of apprehension because I'm going to be even more difficult than I have been. I think you're right. We've got a lot to learn. I'd like to pick out some of the things that you said. And I'd like to give you some positive stuff. One is that I launched a campaign called PPE That Fits. Has anybody heard of this? Right, and it's working. And the BSI are going to produce a report saying this is how you should damn well provide stuff so you don't look like a clown or your dad's kit's on or whatever. That's working, and that brought together a whole crowd of people, and that was being awkward. And you're right, it has to change. So that's happening. The other very important word somebody used was money. Money, as well as value. When I'm liberated again, I am on a campaign to get back the money that's been wasted, because we've had waste of money. And if we want to be politically engaged, we need to do more than saying we're worth this. We need to demonstrate we know how to use the money properly and get it back when it's misused. So I think that's really important. Back to engineering and engineering UK stats. We all need to show that engineering in construction is just as valuable as the usual engineering. I was on the board of Engineering UK for 6 years, and we ran the Big Bang Science and Engineering Fair. Has anybody heard of that? A few heads nodding. The big problem we had, and I was there with Keith Clark from Atkins, was persuading the built environment to recognise they had a role in engineering and turn up and talk to kids. So that's something else we can do something with. And toilets, I've got to finish with toilets. Again, if I had £1 for every time toilets has come up with women in construction, I would be very rich indeed. And I think we could be more creative with this, which is not only do we need decent toilets on construction sites, we could try and get contractors to tick the social value box and say, we will provide public toilets as part of our social return on investment, and we will help solve the problem that way. We've got to be more creative. So I'm not underplaying, I'm not trying to be a sort of Pollyanna here. There are big issues. We can listen to you. We need decent reverse mentoring programs. So you can tell the mature people what it's like walking in your shoes and how we can make a difference. And I'll stop now because there are 3 other people here. Over to you.
Thank you. I wasn't really expecting to make a little speech. I'm not quite sure how to follow toilets. I think one of the key things for me, environment is obviously key for everyone. The state of the environment, I'm very worried about water, et cetera, et cetera. There's only so much that we in this room can do. But I think what we can do more of is actually the softer skills that I think Molly talked about, and about actually creating an environment and a safe space to allow people to grow and to bring out the best in people. Now, I do know that from my own experience and experience of people in various organisations, they don't necessarily feel as though they are in a safe space, and that actually people more senior to them don't necessarily understand them. We just have to speak louder. As women, we have to speak louder, and as young women, we have to speak louder, and we just have to keep on badgering. We can't just expect the change without us doing something about it. And I look at all the youngsters to say that it's incumbent on you as well to help your own future and not expect us to do it for you. I know you're not asking that, but we are there to help you. And I like to think in my team that I give people enough rope, and if they are sinking a bit, that they know I'm there to throw the lifeline. But you won't learn otherwise. So you do need to take responsibility, and you need to understand your own self-worth and get your own confidence to be able to create the change within industry that we need all of you to hold us accountable to, as well as others in other organisations. I should also say one of the reasons I came into planning was because I was 16 years old, and a town planner from a local authority gave a presentation at school, and I had an epiphany moment at that time and realised that actually that was my life's calling. I wanted to be a town planner. So again, I think it's incumbent on all the youngsters and the younger people to give back to schools and start telling people about your experience at your young age, and try to get the next cohort of people into the industry as well. So I think it's at all levels that we can all help each other up and down.
I wanted to say well done to all of you that participated in this. I think the fact that you even volunteered, put your hand up, makes you a leader, because you're going out there and you're saying, I'm not quite sure about this. I've never done a PechaKucha, but I'm trying. And that's the thing, you're trying. Now, when you look at your life, you begin by trying to get in the profession. You do all the things that everyone tells you to do. You keep your head down, you do your job. I think it was Heidi that said we spend too much time on our computers. You do that because that's what you think you're supposed to do. You know, that's how you learn your craft in theory. But you are here and you've done it. You've made it. You, at one point, when you were that 15, 16-year-old kid and you were like, I don't really know what I want to do. And then you suddenly said engineer, architect, planner, whatever it is, you have done it and you're here, you've achieved it. So all of those goals are correct. Now, if you can learn, and what we don't do is at a young age, we just think we have to conform. And realistically, now you've done this, you don't have to conform. And the more radical and abrasive, I don't mean that in a rough way, but the more kind of you bend the rules and you try and do things and you ask for things, the better your career gets, the better you become a leader, the more opportunity you find yourselves in because you're asking for it. You're saying, give it to me. I want it. Because you can keep your head down, keep drawing. No one will notice you. They'll just say, they're really good. They do their job. But actually, if you want to progress, you've got to do these things. If you want to be that leader that fights for sustainability and environment, make yourself that leader. No one's going to tell you. All of us, and I think Martin said it correctly, are not in a position to tell you, because we've screwed it up and we've put you in the position where you have to find a solution. So we're not really that great. You are the people that come up and you say that if we'd have gone 20 years the other direction and we would have been doing this PechaKucha in the other way, I doubt many of us would have been saying sustainability. We would have probably, well, you might have, most of us would have probably been just saying, I really like Daniel Libeskind, you know, or something like that, because that's what really worked for us then. But actually, the reality is you're thinking globally, and that is amazing, whereas we thought very kind of about a project, and that's limiting. And it's taken us 30, 40 years to realize that, and you've discovered that already. So you're already ahead.
Thank you. I think we're missing a trick here, guys. I'm really sorry. I think what you say is really, really interesting. But I think if we're going to answer what these guys have put in front of us, what we're talking about is how the hell do we move this faster? It's all very well saying, you know, don't keep your head down, make a lot of noise. No, we have got to do something about this. Isn't that right? It's no good. You can be fantastic, and you are mostly all fantastic. But if we don't facilitate that, if we don't bring you onto our boards, if we don't listen, ask you for your opinion now, not wait for you to put your head up or to advocate for something or be a nuisance, you know, which I hope you all will be. I was. If we don't do something about it, it can be another 20 years. I'm sorry, that's far too slow. We need to go back and do something now. You've got to help us, not the other way around. I'm sorry. We need you to tell us what to do. You spoke so eloquently about what needs to happen. You have a much better idea about what needs to happen than we do. So I'm just going to put this back across there. I mean, I've been looking at the questions that we've got, engaging with students and graduates. Bloody hell. Let's put them at the bottom of the pile because they're learning. No. They've got the most curious minds. As a student, you've got the best mind ever to think into the future. Don't stick them in the bottom in front of a computer screen. I'm going to pass this back. I want to know what each of you is or would like to do, having heard these guys.
Okay, well, I'll talk about stuff that I am involved in, that we are doing, which is, and I know, Jane, you said don't wear your CIOB hat. I'll talk about things that are institutional, which we are doing. And we have a Tomorrow's Leaders group in the Chartered Institute of Building. And because we're a a mixed group. We're a broad church. We've got engineers and surveyors and architects and town planners and clients all together. And we have a Tomorrow's Leaders group. And we have a Tomorrow's Leaders student festival every year, which is 2 days of virtual interchange globally, where we listen to the students participate. So we are doing that. It could be better, but no, it's doing well. So I'm proud of that. And we're a broad church. We're working with employers and challenging them into saying, this is a better way of doing things. How are you engaging? Wearing a personal hat, when I was an employer, I had extra things on my recruitment matrix. So I went to certain groups because I needed engineers, I needed planners, I needed those core disciplines. But I then began to realize I was missing a trick, and I added 3 extra columns on my recruitment matrix. What else have you done? Will you be the sort of person who can cope with our most difficult client? Will we feel really happy when you walk through the door? They were personal things. And that's how I ended up by recruiting somebody who didn't tick the boxes. She was a classics graduate, but she'd worked for Total Oil. She did a submersion course in French, ended up running their sustainability arm, came to me and I said, what else have you done? And she said, I set up and ran an opera company while at university that made a profit. And I thought, I need her in my business. And she can cope with my most difficult client, and I'll be really happy to see her when she walks through the door. I gave another young man a job because he knocked on my door in the recession, the middle recession. I'm vintage, I've done all 3. And he knocked on the door and said, you probably can't pay me, but I can't stay at home staring at a screen. Can I just come here and be part of a business? So I paid his lunch and his travel. And after 6 months, we got our big jobs back and he became part of our team. So I'm just trying to say there are ways of doing it. This is how I did it. And this is how my institution does it. And yes, I do listen to you. I'm trying to inject something that can work or a different way of looking at things. And the other thing to do to employers in the room is, can you have different non-exec directors who say to you, why are we sitting talking to the same boring old Watsits? Where are the people who do the work in this business? Can they come at Docklands Light Railway? Every board meeting, when I was on the board, we had young people from the business who came and talked to the board about what they did that week. So there are things we can do. I'm sorry, Jane, I'm anxious to get stuff you can do, as well as saying the world's coming to an end. And believe me, I get very depressed about politics and sustainability, but there are things we can do.
Thanks. I'm a little confused about what we're trying to do here this evening. You know, I think we've listened to passionate younger people telling us what's bothering them. And I feel that the most that I can do is give some advice about what to do about that if you feel that you're not being listened to. So, because I can tell you what we're doing in our company. You know, I work for quite a progressive big company. We have shadow boards, we have young people's networking opportunities. We have excellent training programs, we have internship programs, we have apprenticeship programs, all of those things. Oh, I'm so sorry. We have apprenticeship programs, internship programs, all of those things that most big, good companies have. But I feel like what we need to be, advice we need to be giving is, but how do you do more than that? What's in your control to make sure that you can succeed in your jobs? I think it's about really anecdotal advice. I'm incredibly flattered if somebody asks me for help or advice. I'm not irritated or bothered or too busy. You know, it strokes my aged ego, and I think that and I think that's true of a lot of people. So I think if you ask, you know, ask for help and ask for support, demand. I have a young man that works for me who I had a meeting with this morning, told him that he got quite a nice big juicy bonus this year, and he said, yeah, thank you for that. And then he proceeded to lay out a list of 6 things that he wanted. He had it all listed down in a piece of paper in front of him, and I was a bit like, whoa, like where did that come from? And then after I'd sort of kind of got over and answered his questions, I just thought, as he walked away from me, I just thought, good for you. You know, he didn't just come in and get given his bonus and say thank you very much and go off and be happy. He said to me, you know, thanks for that, but this is what I want next. So what I want next, and it made me feel incredibly proud of him. So just ask. Also, I want to know what the young people I work with are interested in. I want to know what they're going to help us to do, to learn, to know about. And with that, again, you have to speak up. I hope in our business we give opportunity in meetings. We don't just let the young people take the notes and do nothing else. But if you're not being given opportunity, put your hand up and speak, because I promise you'll say something interesting and something useful. I promise you. And it's about us being able to fuel that confidence that you have something interesting to say, you have a right to say it, and also you will help if you say it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything you said, Martin. And I think that you need to learn about being a leader right from day one of your career, and how you can make change and not wait till you get to the top and think that's when it all happens. You need to constantly evolve your network, your soft skills, your leadership skills. We in our team, in my team, we have sessions where each level mentors the level below. So a director will have weekly meetings with the associates will have weekly meetings with the senior planners, and the senior planners will have weekly meetings with the graduates. So that's a safer space than a graduate having to come to the big vintage boss and give their thoughts and opinions on something, but it's a way that they can actually voice some concerns, or actually sometimes a senior planner is closer in age and experience to some of the things that graduate is going through than necessarily I would be. So I think it's making sure that you have a structure in place within your organization. And if you don't, then ask for it, because you can always instigate it. You can always ask for your boss to do that. I've had recent changes in my team, and new people coming in is fantastic for very many reasons. And one of the reasons is because they come up with new ideas. Just because we've always done it the way we've done it doesn't necessarily mean it's right, but we need to just be challenged the whole time. And being challenged from everyone is important. But I do know it's scary. I get that. If you believe it, used to not be able to say boo to a goose when I was a graduate and a young planner. I was very nervous. I didn't like to speak up and things, but you find your voice, and you have to find your voice in your own way. And if you do it just by incremental little bits, then that helps, and that helps on your leadership skills, and it also helps to create change as well within an organization, because we should be listening. Some people are better at listening than others, and you need to show us how we can listen better.
Thank you. It's quite interesting, this, because I didn't realize, but one of the things I have done is I've set up a program, and it's all about creating leaders while you're at university. And it's a master's program. And from the get-go, I basically say to them, look, guys, all of you here will probably be MDs, CEOs. You're super smart, super bright. And the only thing stopping you is you. And a good part of it, when we talk about soft skills, we look at emotional intelligence, we look at behaviors, we look at behavioral patterns. We look at the psychology of managing people. You don't have to be leading a company with 50, 100, 200 people. You can be a leader within the immediate confines of where you're with. You'll become a natural leader. You do it. And what is that? It's showing a bit of empathy, showing understanding, listening to people, thinking, what can I do without what am I going to get out of it? So it's a mindset shift, and that will help you move forward. leadership is, there's so many things in leadership, but when you take that behavior into a company, you soon very quickly become a natural leader. So I think in many respects, there's a opportunity here with all of you that you're looking at, how do I progress in my career? How do I become that person? I think you start by the questions that you had, the points that you had. Ask yourself, what do I think the answer is, in a sense, because you've got the answer within you. You don't really genuinely need us to tell you. You don't need it. You have the answer. But we're good to bounce off. So I think what a good part of what you can do, I think, a number of you work at BDP, come and talk to her and just say, I've got an idea. This is what I think. And just go for it. Just put yourself forward. Even things that are above your pay grade, so to speak, just go for it. Just say it. Because by virtue of the fact that you're thinking about it and you're coming up with an answer, you already have an idea. And if it were your company, that would be how you would solve and resolve the situation. And I think somebody said, Martin probably said, put young people in front and just get out of the way. I think that's a really great idea. And I would really advocate that's not a bad thing to do. But you're also right. With time and experience, there's a few things that you start to think, okay, I realize I do it this way. And if anything, you calm yourself down. So I would say what age gives you is a bit of calmness, because you can measure a situation rather than going gung-ho. But there's no harm in going gung-ho and bouncing the idea. But don't wait to be asked for it. And we might not come and ask you to come back at this because we might not see it. You can't do what you don't see. So be what they see. Make yourself that person, that visible person. Otherwise, I think individuals like people here will automatically go for the people that shout and say something. Shout is the wrong word, but they say something. So make yourself. Some people, not everybody wants to be a leader. Some people are quite happy to sit in, do their job. I have a really good friend who works in a practice down the road. He's one of the best architects I know. He's been asked by his company 4 times, do you want to be a director? Be a director. And he said, no, I don't want to. Why don't you? Well, you don't pay me that much more, and I do buildings now, and I'm happy to do buildings. I can leave, I can go and see the five-a-side with my kids. I can have that life. I don't have to worry about new business. I don't have to worry about issues about people being late. He's mapped it out, and he said, this works for me as a professional. I'm not looking to be a leader. And before, we used to laugh about him and say, oh, Dave is so kind of, he's so, what's he like? And now we say, he's quite wise, actually, isn't he? Because, yeah, there's a lot of headache there. And when you go through all of that shenanigans, you kind of sometimes think, why am I doing this? It's a thankless task. But in a sense, you know yourself. So be the person you want to be. Can I say one last thing? Sorry. Oh, all right. Okay, one last thing. There are 3 yous. You see yourself in 3 ways. There's the person who sits there and isn't entirely sure what they're doing, and they're looking. There's the person next to you who is you, and you know what you're doing. You're trying to do it, and you are behaving like the person you want to be. And then there's the third of you who is watching you in the middle doing the things that you want to do. Now, if you want to be the person that's watching you doing the things that you want to do, lift your game in the middle. Be that person. Be that perfect person that you think you should be, and not worry about things. Don't deviate. Don't deflect. Don't be worried about the situation. Do it. Do it because you got one chance to do it.
Martin, you're looking desperately wanting to say something. Okay, if you haven't heard that, Martin wants to know what's your biggest problem, and don't make it too personal. People, right, we have one thing. Oh, we've got a box, and somebody's going to run around with a box. Would you like to answer that? Anybody in the audience can answer that, because we're now opening it to you to ask questions of everybody here. I've got one at the end, but carry on. Oh, look, put your hand up. There we go. Isn't that cool? I like it.
Why is this? Is this a mic?
Yeah,
Oh
it
my God,
works.
this is a mic. That's great. Thank you for your inspirational talks, everyone. And I feel like we have learned something from each of you talking today, and obviously all the young speakers as well. I think in terms of things, challenges, I think that we face in this industry, there are two things that I've been thinking about. One of them is, because just replying to what Tessa was saying about how important it is for, say, senior engineers to talk to grads and associates to talk to senior engineers and have that open conversation. And I agree that's really important, but also what's actually also really important is for those grads to talk to the directors and to that platform to exist, because then you can have a direct conversation, and that's where change could happen, perhaps, because we're talking with the people who are leading the businesses, etc. And the second point I wanted to make is, because if you have that conversation with the directors who are trying to win jobs, get jobs so that you work on them, I think the one thing that really influences everything is money, right? And it's actually pricing appropriately a project so that you can do a good work on it. And by good work is aspirational work, not just the business as usual that pays the bills. So it's having that sort of conversation. It's like, if we want change and if we want to have more sustainable buildings, how could you sell to the client that across all disciplines and engage with the client, understand that if you want to get something which is better, different, you've got to pay for it, but to sell that and get the money, and we all get paid a bit more maybe as well.
Oh, there's a good one.
It does look a bit weird talking into a box, I have to say. But I just wanted to come back on your first point. Yes, that hierarchy of chats does not stop a graduate coming straight to me. In fact, we have a work experience guy with us as well. He comes directly to me. I sit down with people. I go through their minutes and things. So I am very open to all conversations. So I absolutely agree. It's not just about talking to the next level. It is about the director. Whoever leads the team, doesn't necessarily need to be a director, but to be open to conversation and having as many of those fireside chats as possible. And if it's a technical issue, then I'll probably send it on to someone else. But if it's there's the soft skills, the softer side of understanding, you just need, as a director and as a business leader, you have to be what's the word? I can't think what the word I'm looking for. Open, collaborative, engaging, listening, all of those skills, because everyone has a point of view. Now, I do appreciate that it does come easier to some people than others, but we just have to try harder.
I'm going to ask you a question now. This is good. Thank you very much for that. But I think one of the things I think is missing is the understanding of those softer skills need to include how to act like a leader, how to communicate, how to speak to people so that you get your point over, how to be an advocate for something, be an advocate for a building which has enough fees attached to it, but will do what your client wants and actually add value to his property at the end because of what you're doing. There are ways of doing it. I mean, how many people here have had advocacy training? Put your hand up. Oops. Okay. That's the next project. Martin?
I'm going to just tell you what would happen if the youngest, lowest paid person in my business sent an email to the chief executive of my business, who earned some millions of pounds last year and runs a £12 billion company. That would probably be one of the first and quickest emails that he replied to, because he would think it was very bad form not to reply to that email to that person who was brave enough to send him an email. He would probably reply saying, thanks for your email, I've sent it on to blah, blah, to discuss what you asked. Or he would send it on to somebody and say, this is interesting, can you fix it, please? it would happen really, really fast. And I should think he would reply to that email quicker than he would reply to one of the big shareholders who asked him a difficult question that he would like, oh, you know, and take a day or so to reply. And that's the culture that we're in now. It would be not good form for him not to reply to that email. So, you know what you got to do? Send the frickin' email.
I've just got a query for the group. It's a great panel, and I guess the panel's very progressive and engaged, and everyone's here because they're progressive and engaged. So that's great. We're kind of preaching to the converted, to use a saying as such. But how I guess the issues in the industry we're talking about are happening quite a lot outside of your organisations because you have these systems in place. Outside the organisation I work, because I'm allowed to speak up. How do we infiltrate to the people not in this room, to the people that do not want to attend these things, and the people in organisations that they can't speak up and they can't do this? How do we change that to make a bigger industry impact?
Well, there's a lot to be said for shame, and fear. Combination of shame, fear, and throw in money, then you're on a winning ticket. I quite agree. You make a very good point. We're all engaged here, which is why I think one of the helpful things is to talk about things that we've done that have actually worked. I think one of the things we're really, really rubbish at in this industry is talking up how bloody brilliant it is. We spend most of the time so desperate to get a project done. We can't wait. We think, right, okay, God, we didn't lose too much or we weren't too far behind. Let's get on with the next job. We are rubbish at celebrating what has worked. And then we're surprised that nobody wants to work here because it's just one long misery, really. So I think we need to be better at post-project evaluation. I'm talking about in a business environment. And people say they do it, but I know that they very often don't, because we'll get round to it next week and we're getting on with the next bid or we're dealing with other things. And I think in those post-project evaluations, you can talk honestly about, let's talk about what worked, what we're really pleased with, and you should engage everybody in it so everybody understands how that worked. Now, a little thing I do often is, apart from asking people, why on earth are you in the industry? I will say, and I'll ask you now, who's done something in the last month when they've thought, wow, that was bloody fantastic? Who has had something really brilliant done or happened to them in the last month? Show of hands. Now, isn't that interesting? It's these young people, right? What about the rest of you? Oh, right, okay, there's a more mature person. Tell me. Well, yeah, okay, I'm choosing my words carefully. What have you done that was really, really brilliant then? Tell us. Right. Right. So you achieved something. You achieved something. Great. Who else has done something brilliant? Who's not these young, thrusting, telling us what to do people? Come on, you old hands. Nobody. There we go. Point made. Think up what we've done that's good. Share it with them. And then I think also something I did in a company that had a lot of dinosaurs. I held breakfast meetings for the younger people, the people at the coalface, and said, I want you, this is picking up your point, Jane, how do you talk? And I'd say, and it was everybody, I even got the lovely lady who did reactive maintenance. Talk to us, we're all mates, we're all here having orange juice and croissant and coffee. What do you do on a Tuesday? It was transformational, and we found the storytellers, and then they could tell the directors. I'm trying to be practical here. This is something you can do, but you're spot on.
Just for change, I'm going to tell you something I did with my practice. A long time ago, I decided that every single person, down to the person on the reception desk, needed to improve their communication skills. So we had a day out and went off to this conference centre with an actor. And the actor told us how he deals with nerves going on stage and what you do. And shall I share what his biggest thing was? Oh, it's fabulous. He held that for me. Right, what you had to do is before you get... no, and you wouldn't want to hear me sing. I'll dance for you, but I'm not going to sing. The first thing you do is you put on a bolero, and it's very tight. And so your shoulders are brought well back, and that's before you go into the room, and you've got to say something amazing. And then you take deep breaths, so your lungs are full of air. And the last thing I think was the funniest, which is why it sticks, is you get a very small lemon or a lime, depending upon what you want, and you put it between your bum cheeks, hypothetically, Karen, not really, and you squeeze your bum because that pulls out your chest, and in you go. Right. And we practiced doing that with this chap. I have to tell you, it was the funniest thing we've ever done. We all screamed with laughter. But he started off the day with getting us to stand up and say what we did. At the end of the day, he said, put your bolero on, squeeze your lemon, now tell me what you do. And the difference was phenomenal. I'll send him in to meet all of you. Don't forget the lemon, that's the best bit. But I do think that training is very important. And I do think training in things that you're not used to doing normally is very important. Whether it's got a lemon or not, actually, if you feel confident in saying what you need to say, like all these young people today, then you will be able to make a change because you'll have the confidence to do it and to say it. The point is to say it, not just have some idiot old person say, can you do something up here? Actually do it in your businesses and beyond your businesses. Do it with the people that you work with across the industry, anybody you meet. Bloody well say it. Put that bolero on and go for it. And believe me, they'll listen to you.
I also just want to say is if they're not in your own company, find someone from another company and go and talk to. The number of people over the years that I've mentored, even last week, an architect came to talk to me. I thought it was going to be a B2B. I ended up mentoring her about her career and what life choices and things that she should make. And she left that meeting a different person because she felt that she actually could speak to someone about her issues that she couldn't speak to in her office. So if you do know, we all know people in our industry, don't feel as though it just has to be within your own company. Talk to as many people as you can. And if you want to try and make change within your industry, in your business, and they're not up for it, move. Find somewhere that does provide you with that good space to work in.
Absolutely spot on. I've told a lot of people in my time, move right now. Molly, you wanted to come in. Use your box.
Yeah, this does actually feel really weird. Yeah, so obviously, like, I think there's been a lot of talk about, like, within your own companies. And I think there's also that thing of, like, design teams. Like, I'm a graduate as of September. I graduated in June. And since joining, actually being in meetings and seeing how little people understand each other. Like, I've come from a background where I'm half an architect and half an engineer and kind of dabble somewhere in the middle. And I'll sit with my engineers, we'll finish a meeting and they'll be like, what's that architect on about? I'm like, this. And they're like, how do you get that? I'm like, but they've just said it. And I think it's actually, everyone needs to sit in these rooms and understand what each other is saying. And I think that really needs to be an approach people take. And I just was wondering on that kind of topic, like, how do you think we can approach that? How do we get design teams to understand each other?
My thesis in my construction law degree was on the impact of language and perception on conflict. And we all talk different languages. You are spot on. You are wise. The engineers say it some ways, the contractors say it in other ways, and then you've got all the people floating around. We've seen it on the screen. Insurers, they're not part of the contract, but boy, don't they have an influence, and boy, don't they talk a different language. So you're spot on. How do you do it? You have a proper initial meeting where people have the confidence to say, What the hell does that acronym mean? What are we talking about here? So we need that. Oh, and I think you, Nasta, who raised the thing about common terms for sustainability? Was it you? I think it was. Don't worry. Anyway, the president of the Civils, another woman, yay! Another woman has called a group of presidents and CEOs to look at biodiversity and has called for the first task to be a definition of terms. So you're right, and it's happening. But we need to get the language, and it's back to Jane's point and your point, which is have the confidence to say, wait for the moment, and then say, could I ask what you mean by so-and-so? Go for it. I can tell you that most other people sitting around that table are thinking, thank God she's asked. And I speak from experience. So very good question. Speak up.
So Jane and I met in 2016 when Jane was the president of RIBA. And I went and knocked on her door and asked for her help to set up an organisation that now 2 of the board members of which were on your PechaKucha panel today. It's called YADA, Young Architects and Developers Alliance, and it was formed exactly to answer that point, which is that I think that developers and architects live in different worlds and speak different languages. And we discovered from just having a go at how we might change that the best thing to do was put a bottle of beer and a glass of wine in somebody's hand and stick them in a room and let them get on with it. So it is really the simplest things that encourage communication and mutual understanding and ideas sharing. It's about having a drink. It's about writing an email. It's about getting a good LinkedIn subscription and writing messages on LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn a lot, and I feel guilty if I don't answer a message from somebody. So play on that. You know, it is really simple to just do this, to start having communication and start having conversations and asking questions.
Just answering that question. One of the things I've been doing is the course I run is a joint master's in engineering and architecture. So you become both an architect and an engineer. So what we've been doing is we've been getting the architects to come and talk to the engineering students and the engineers to come and talk to the architects and just cross over saying, well, what do you mean by that? It's exactly what you're saying. And it's really interesting because a lot of the architects talk very flowery. A lot of the engineers are really straight to the point and communicate well. But a lot of the engineers say, we wish we spoke like the architects. And a lot of the architects say, I wish people listened to me a little bit more seriously like the engineers. So the grass is always greener on the other side. So we've got to work closer together. I think the alliance is a good one. So if you sit in the middle of both, you're in a really powerful position for the future.
Right. I actually think this is more conversation that we need to have, but perhaps not now. Over a drink is a very, very good way of doing it. Before we head for a drink, I'm just going to see if Caroline will be kind enough to come up. Caroline is the reason that we're all here. She set up the Equilibrium Network and dragged a few people in to help her on the steering committee, many of whom are here tonight. And you've got something very exciting to talk about.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I first want to say thank you very much to everybody for coming along and to all our amazing PechaKucha people, and also to our, what do we call them, veterans? Vintage panel. So thank you also. I don't know how much you know about the Equilibrium Network. I'm not going to tell you anything other than to say we have a purpose, and our purpose is to enable women to have equal influence in the design and delivery of the built environment. So we're interested in helping organizations that create the built environment to actually become more diverse in the way in which they operate and in the way in which they design their projects and in the projects that they actually create. So, you know, it's quite a big issue because we want women to be actually having a voice in this profession. Now, we like to be provocative, and that's why we run events like this. And I think that some of the things which are being raised today should be considered to be really provocative. But we also like to be useful, because I don't think there's much point in just simply being provocative. So there's two things that I wanted to let you know. The first is that the questions that have been raised today are going to be taken away and considered. And we have an aspiration to create a manifesto for succession, which hopefully will be something that will be useful to the professions. Meantime, though, we've been working as part of a consortium with EU funding, which is quite a nice thing to have, and on a project that's called Diversity. And the great thing about diversity is that it is a project that is looking to make sure that there are diverse people involved in creating the built environment. One of the things which we did for diversity is we pulled together a mentoring toolkit that is focused not on helping people to become better technically at their jobs, but a mentoring toolkit that is geared to helping people to become better at ensuring gender, particularly diversity within their organizations. This mentoring toolkit has been through all the process of getting EU approval and so on and so forth. And so we're now delighted to be in a position to be able to tell people about it and to be promoting it out there as something which we hope will be useful to organizations who are creating the built environment, whether they are consultants or whether they are clients. And it's a toolkit that is now available. Now, as I understand it, and Adele, I might get this wrong, but as I understand it, if you have looked at the QR code and downloaded the link for today, somewhere down the bottom, there's a button that you can press, which will download the mentoring toolkit straight onto your device. It will go into your downloads. It won't suddenly appear on your phone, but it's there. It's free. Please use it. Please promote it. Please tell other people about it. We're putting it out there to be useful. So once again, thank you to everybody, and I'll pass you over to Jane again. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. I think that's going to be enough for us. We've been nattering. Firstly, to add to Caroline, thank you all for turning up. Thank you to our young people for setting us straight. And thank you very much for listening to our antique people over here. Oh no, vintage, beg your pardon. Thank you very much for all your contributions. It's really interesting to see actually how we're all coming together with the same views. We've got a lot to do. We've got to do it really fast, and we're not going to do it with just people at the top telling everybody how it is. So carry on the conversations. There's lots of nice looking stuff over the back there. Go and help yourself and carry on the conversations, and let's see what we can do with all the wonderful things that you have provided for us. Thank you very much, everybody.